is a beautiful mess. A beautiful mess, yeah. Life is a beautiful mess. A beautiful mess, yes. Life is a beautiful mess. A beautiful mess. I'm trying, I'm crying, I feel like I'm dying. I'm doing my best.
All right, welcome back to Being Human and Other Shit. Today we have our friend Tony on, and he's going to talk about some serious stuff, but he's a funny guy, so I'm sure it's going to get interesting here. Really about just childhood trauma, and then
childhood trauma.
So funny.
so hilarious. Childhood trauma, and then entering adulthood and eventually parenthood, right?
Right.
So just tell us a little bit about yourself and your like upbringing, your just background.
All right. Yeah, my background is I'm a Sacramento kid, born in South Sac and kind of raised in South Sac. Born in 1985. I'm 37. And I was born to a mother and father, and they got divorced when I was probably in second grade. And life's just been a roller coaster ever since then. You know, it's just dealing with things and the divorce, and my father was abusive. My mom's an alcoholic, and I don't even know where to start, to be honest. There's just a lot.
Wherever.
I read a book.
Whatever you feel like is the most like.
I mean, you can even go, I know each parent too can bring some different, specific traumas too. So if you even want to walk through that piece and what you feel like is like, what trauma specifically did you have to deal with in your childhood that stands out to you that you still carry with?
Yeah, I think it was just from both parents just not being very well educated and very good parents to begin with. You know, just from day one, my earliest memories are... You know, being at home with my mom who was drinking. I was probably in kindergarten, but I remember just being home alone. My dad was at work, and I was with my mom, and she was on the phone with one of her friends or something. And, you know, just being her ignoring me or just whatever. And I remember taking her lighter off the counter, and we had these puppies. And
oh no,
I go into my bed. The puppy had ran under my bed into the back corner, and the bed was tucked into the corner, and I couldn't see back there. So I'm like, oh, I don't know. I'm super young, so I'm like, I know what makes light. My mom's lighter. So I go in the kitchen, grab the lighter off the counter, and I go into my room and I try to light it under the bed, and I end up catching the bed on fire.
Oh my gosh!
And this is one of my earliest memories. Is I completely light the bed on fire. I run in and I tell my mom, and I just remember hiding and being so scared of my dad because he was abusive. Yeah. You know, when he was going to find out and come home. And I just remember the fireman coming into the bathroom and trying to get me out from behind the toilet.
Oh my gosh.
And just, you know, kind of dragging me out. And
you're like, I'm going to live here now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just in panic mode. And
did they ask you why you're so scared?
I don't remember.
Just assume
I was so young.
Fire?
I was so young. I just remember the bed being on fire. And I remember my grandmother being so upset about it years later because she would hold it against me, because my grandmother on my mom's side was just this evil German lady that hated my father because he was an asshole. Yeah. Rightly so. You know, can't blame her for hating him, but she held it against me because I share the same. I'm the third. He was a junior, so we share the same name. I look like my dad. Yeah. You know, we have a lot of the same mannerisms and whatnot. So she would just take a lot of her angst and anger out on me due to him. And yeah, I just remember her saying, well, you burnt my bed. Like all the furniture was hers or something. It was like her house that we lived in. And it was just a bad situation.
Was she abusive as well?
She was verbally abusive and physically when I was older. You know, my father was physically abusive. My mom wasn't physically abusive. She was just like verbally abusive. She was an alcoholic, so she would just say things when she's in a terror and just being mean and things like that. But yeah, just kind of going back to the earlier age of just dealing with that trauma from the outset, you know, just trying to get away from the family, just with my dad's anger issues. And, you know, ever since I was a young child, just dealing with that.
Is it just you? You have siblings?
No. So I do have a sister who's 5 years older than me. Mm-hmm. So we grew up together until my sisters got, they got divorced when I was in second grade. I can only remember because I went to 13 schools all throughout my childhood.
Holy
right?
Shit.
So I can only place all these memories in order based on what grade I was in, because I kind of remember the classroom and how old I was based on that grade. So my sister Marcy, she's 5 years older. So we grew up together only until my parents got divorced. And then as soon as my parents divorced in second grade, it was my dad went to work one day, and I don't remember how this all happened, but me and my sister were home. This big truck showed up with the trailer, and all the shit in the house was just loaded up. These dudes, my grandmother, I guess, had paid movers to come in, clean the house out, and take everything but my dad's mattress and leave it on the floor.
Oh my gosh.
And take us out of the house and move to Northern California. So they lived outside of Redding in a small town called Fall River.
So your grandma took you?
Yeah,
guys?
She took me, my sister, and my mom, and just kind of took us away because, you know, my dad's abusive. She hated him anyways. It's time to get out.
This was second grade then?
This was about second grade, yeah. So, yeah, the moving truck came. All the shit was packed up, and we left the house. And I just remember taking the freeway and just kind of getting up there and moving up to this small town, Fall River, and living with them. So in periodic instances in my life, I would live with my mom. When my dad got sick of me or we were homeless, I would have to go with my mom to live, you know, and just stay up there. But it was just as miserable there because my sister, she lived there permanently. She would come and do the same thing reverse of me because my sister, the only way I can explain it is my sister couldn't take an ass whooping, I guess. You know, obviously she's a girl. She's more frail, right?
Hey.
Well,
right?
First of all,
you're right there.
I can take a ass whooping.
But talking to her later, like she could not endure the physical abuse, but she could endure the mental and the verbal abuse easier as a woman living with two other women. So she would just move and live with my grandmother and my mom and be fine. And to me, I felt like Cinderella. Like, man, I don't even know where to start. There's so many things.
Yeah.
But I would always feel like Cinderella because I was Anthony Diaz. That was my father's name. And whenever I lived with my mom and my grandmother in her house, I was treated like Cinderella. I never got an allowance. I never got new clothes. I was treated just like a second-class citizen to those three women.
Yeah.
And I always had resentment towards that. My sister just ate it up. Like she was, I don't blame her. She's
a child too, so
she was young. Yeah, she's only 5 years older than me. So when I'm young, she's young. And years later, when she was an adult and had to like rescue me from situations, she would always just kind of feel bad, like she abandoned me. But I'm just like, hey, I would do the same thing if I was if I was in your shoes. I'd say, fuck you, I'm out. Like, I'm living my life.
Kid, you're both in survival mode at that point.
Yeah,
so
and plus,
she's not looking out for you.
Yeah, you have a penis and you're weird, and we don't relate. Like, what are you doing? So
get out of here.
I get it. So in the opposite sense, we would live separate lives. We weren't raised together, but when shit got bad for my sister, she would try to live with my dad for 6 months and then go back. And same with me, when shit was bad with my dad, I would move up there and live there for a little bit. So
you just swap around.
There was 3 parts of my life where I went to elementary school in the small town. I went to, was it middle school or like freshman year in the small town? Then I went to sophomore, I don't even know, I think it might have been senior year, some point in high school. At the end of my school year, I lived up there. So 3 times I was up there with my mom.
Why did they pick that town?
That's where she lived. Yeah. So my mom's family, they're German. My grandmother Ruth, and I never met either of my grandparents. My grandfathers, I'm sorry, not my grandmothers, but both my grandfathers passed away when they were young. So I never met either one of them, me or my sister. So my dad's side is Portuguese. My mom's side is German. So on the German side, I guess my grandmother Ruth and my grandfather, who I never met, worked for the military when they were young, building rockets and doing all that. So they're semi-successful. Yeah. For at least from what I was told. And they owned a lot of property in California, and they worked down in SoCal for the military. And they ended up owning a ranch and raising cattle. Like, they semi-retired early, and he raised cattle up in this small town and built his own house on a lake and, you know, yada, yada, yada. But he ended up getting cancer. And there's a whole long story with it, but I guess he ended up dying young. And my grandmother Ruth ended up, the story is that she was cheating on him with his cancer doctor.
Oh my gosh.
And having like a relationship with the doctor, and he died, and just, she took his whole inheritance and kind of ran it to the ground. So she was the sole heir to his money. And there's a story to that too. I guess my grandmother Ruth, when they were young, she was part of a big German family from Wyoming or something. I have a lot of German siblings I've never even met. And they lived back in the Midwest. Apparently, when they were kids, my grandmother and my grandfather ran away. He was married to her sister, but left and had a relationship with her sister, my grandmother Ruth, and they ran off and took off from the family to California together. So they were kind of cut off from their family. They disowned both of them because, you know, they did dirty to their family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She stole her sister's husband and kind of left town. So
it's a damn movie.
Right. Yeah. It's a whole movie. Right. So they came out to California and started a new life. And, you know, I had my mom and I had my mother, and she had a brother, my Uncle Don, that ended up living and kind of dying in that same small town as well.
Damn.
So yeah, there's a lot of history there.
So did you?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say. So you might be more on track, but I was gonna go back a little bit more. So I know that your mom's mom, there was some alcoholism with her. Do you know anything about your grandfathers and your paternal grandmother? Was there any, like, I'm trying to see if there was like a generational like cycle with this, or if there's abuse or any type of addiction or anything?
You know, on my dad's side, you know, when he was physically abusive, he would always say kind of like, you're getting half as bad as I ever got.
Yeah.
You know, so I know it's generational there. You know, he'd always kind of throw that in my face like, oh, you big little bitch, you know, whatever. So I know he was abused from his dad, but on my mother's side, the family was so secretive because I never met my grandfather on my German side of the family. And my grandmother was so negative towards me. She never opened up to me. We didn't have really a relationship, so we never really got to know. And honestly, I don't know if I ever really knew my mom in a sense that I didn't get to really know her. Like, she was my mother, and I got to spend some years with her, but, you know, in her alcoholism, you never really...
It's all just surface.
Like, how well did I know her?
It's like day to day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, day to day, you know, just the little moments where she would let me smoke cigarettes in grade school because
hey, you're that fucking kid.
Cool,
you're like, hey, cutie, hey, cutie.
Yeah, right.
Got a fucking pack of cigarettes, roll them in a sleeve and shit, like the Fonz.
I thought it was a cool thing. Like,
dude, you probably were,
like,
though.
Sitting there smoking a cigarette with my mom, like, this is cool.
I mean, near Reading, there's probably a lot of kids doing that shit.
I'm sure.
Just the amount of, when I think back of the amount of neglect and just silliness that went on with my childhood. Like, I remember before my parents got divorced, we lived in South Sac, and we lived kind of off of Foreign Road, Gerber, in the South Sac area, and they were just neglectful. Like, I was the kid that we didn't have the coolest day was when my dad was in jail because we had no rules. Like, he was the only one that had authority in the house. My mom didn't give a shit. She was always 2 sheets to the wind.
Yeah.
You know, this woman would literally do our homework so my dad wouldn't flip out. Like, everything was in order.
Yeah.
She would do our homework so everything was in line.
You're like, Mom,
she didn't
you
have
missed one.
Yeah. Mom, I gotta fucking be on this test.
I never even knew she was doing our homework until I hear them arguing about it, because she would just do it so she didn't have to get fallback and get abuse from him. Like, he was just physically abusive. He was the kind of asshole that, you know, if his dinner wasn't made right, it would go against the wall. Like, it was just one of these things. Like,
was he physically abusive towards everybody in the house? Your mom?
Oh yeah, he was just my mom got the worst of it. You know,
and was it daily? Was it just like any little thing would set him off?
It was daily. Yeah, it was daily. It just, you know, there was points in my childhood where living in the house before they got divorced, I remember there was days where I was so scared I would literally go pee in the corner of my room because I didn't want to leave my room.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like, I remember just peeing next to my closet. Like, this is easier than going out there.
And CPS never got involved?
Not that I remember going to therapy, whether it was CPS or not. I was too young, but I remember sitting in office with people that would ask me questions.
Yeah.
But I don't remember whatever came of that. But, you know, I'd always go there with my dad and leave with my dad. So I don't think I was never institutionalized in a foster care program.
Yeah.
But I don't know how CPS wouldn't get involved when police were at the house often. You know, like, there was times where I remember my dad, police would come to the house and he would hide in the garage. And I just remember police with their guns out going through the house, like clearing it, looking for him. And it's just ridiculous.
You're like, well, I don't know where he's at.
Yeah. Hey,
right?
Everybody, I have no idea.
I just don't understand that system, though, because your dad got arrested multiple times and was in jail multiple times. It's like, you would think that.
Yeah, I don't know if this was like a 90s thing.
I mean, I was going to say, it's in the 90s.
It's the good old boys.
Well, I don't even know. I feel like even now it's kind of dumb. Like, not to hate on it completely, but I feel like people can pretty much be like ready to murder their children before, you know, there's all these like red flags and then nothing's happening.
Though, so many social workers are so impacted.
Yeah.
I mean, their caseloads are like hundreds of kids.
Yeah.
They can only do so much, you know. No, can you imagine having that fucking job? No. I would never want that job.
Yeah. There's got to be cracks and loopholes that people just fall through. And
yeah, 100%.
You know, at least they probably figure, well, hey, this kid's got 2 parents that are alive and doing okay. I've got to deal with little Johnny, who's got one parent that just got shot in the head. And,
yeah,
you know, I'm sure there was plenty of kids worse off than I was. So,
yeah. Did you have any teachers like ask you questions or raise concerns?
That's what I was curious about too. Yeah.
I remember my sister going to school. I remember one time my dad left the house and he told us not to leave the house. Don't go anywhere. You're gonna get your ass beat.
Yeah.
But we're like, we're not gonna listen to you. Whatever. We saw him leave in his Pontiac, and we're like, oh, we're good. So she gave me a bump on her bike on the handlebars, and we're like going to her friend's house. We're going somewhere, and I just remember the fear of we saw my dad's black Pontiac come around. He must have forgot something or something. And he comes in and he sees us leaving the house, and we end up going back, and he beat my sister so bad. I guess that I just remember her. We went to school, and I guess she couldn't sit down because her back was so bruised that they called, they got the sheriffs or whatever involved. And I remember him being arrested and them asking me questions about like what happened. And
what would he go to jail for? Like,
I don't know. Honestly, I was too young. I don't know. I'd like to pull his rap sheet just to see what's on there.
Yeah.
Just to see how long it is.
Because it sounds like he was in and out of the system.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. I have uncles that have been in and out of the system. It's just a white trash kind of family. It's just,
yeah.
They're uneducated and it's
just
sad.
Obviously cycles of abuse that are just passed down.
Yeah,
constantly.
exactly. Just trauma that's just passed down.
Yeah. Are your parents still alive?
My mom passed away when she was like 52. Sad. I don't really know when she passed away. But she passed away young. My dad's still alive, but we don't talk. I excommunicated him after. Yeah, he fucked that up one year with the kids with Christmas, and I cut him off. I said, you know what? I should have done this years ago, but you're done.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised. I mean, I know that, like, as humans, we want to have relationships with our family, but he's lucky that you even gave him another chance.
My dad, for all the shit I can say about him being a bad father and abusive and all that, he didn't abandon me, I guess, in a sense, and I don't know if.
Not physically.
Who knows if it was money that he was after or what? I remember him going to custody to try to get, because he knows how vicious my grandmother was toward me. Yeah. Because obviously I would tell him, she would spit in my face and my God, dude. She would just treat me like crap. So he wanted to get me away from her, but then, in the same token, you're just as bad. Yeah. You don't spit in my face, but.
That's ultimate disrespect.
Yeah,
though.
Just who graduates 6th grade and their prize is getting their head bashed into the side of a freaking Chevy pickup truck. It's like, that's not cool.
Do you think that your dad was doing that to, like, I know it's an old school mentality, but to, like, toughen you up? Or was it really, like, he was just, I mean, fuck, I hate to say like this, but, like, kind of a bitch who was putting his hands on kids, I think he's just a bitch who's putting his hands on kids. I honestly think that he's just a piece of shit. In being a father and being a man today, there's no excuse. Like, I just remember we were living at one of his girlfriend's houses, and I remember the first time I must have been in 4th, 5th grade, and I remember being in the bedroom of a girlfriend's house we were living with, and they weren't home at the time, and we were arguing about something, and he called me a cocksucker, and I don't remember what a cocksucker was, but I called him one back, and I just remember just getting hit over the side of the head and being blacked out, and just stuff like that. Like, that's. Like, he would close fist fucking just punch you?
Well, I don't know if it wasn't close fist. He would
you're
slap
small
me
enough that like that's just the same.
Hey, you hit the right hit the right area too.
It's like me with Jonathan. Like, I'm sure if I open-handed just pale, he was just a bitch. Well, the biggest bitch thing that I remember he ever did, and for some reason it sticks with me, and I've told Melissa several times that one time before they were divorced, my mom made a cake. Cake batter in the bowl, yada yada yada, whatever. She let me take the cake bowl and lick it and get the leftover batter, right?
Yeah.
You're a kid.
Yeah.
His ass gets home, or somehow I remember him getting upset about the cake batter in the bowl that she let me have it. He beat the shit out of both of us.
What the?
Over the cake batter that was in the bowl, because I got to eat it and he didn't. So I just remember sitting in the dining room crying, the bowl smashed on the floor, and he's sitting there choking my mom over the stove, like literally just blue in the face, choking her to death. Just crazy. Like, I beat myself up over not cutting him off sooner or just doing something worse to him sooner. But to myself, I think about it now, growing up with him and living with him all through high school, was that we fed off of each other in a sense. I needed him for security and for a home, and I don't know what he needed me for to act like he's living a normal life, or that he he's being a man and taking care of a kid or raising a son, but
yeah,
it's really just business. I mean, it came a point where when I was older, I got to a certain size, you know, in high school, to where the one time where I remember the abuse kind of stopped, you know, before he would stop putting hands on me. I think I was a sophomore, and I just remember arguing with him because I would get snarky and kind of, I never wanted to fight my dad because I knew that's always what he wanted. He wanted to go fisticuffs and just go hand to hands and just see what I had, but I never wanted to give him the pleasure of just whooping my ass because he was twice my size, you know. I just like, no, I'm not gonna, I'm just gonna take it. So I just let him choke me out or just do whatever he's gonna do and just take it. But there was one day in high school where we got in a fight and he was choking me in the hallway, and I just remember kind of tussling with him in the hallway, and my friends were gonna pick me up, and I remember running out of the hallway when I heard my friend's car pull up, and I run out, and my friends were kind of, you know, we just were troublemakers, you know.
Yeah.
And I run out of the house. He's chasing me out of the house, and I run to my friend's car, and my friend, you know, him and another buddy get out of the car, and we're all just kind of standing there, and we have this little standoff. And I think that was a realization that my dad had, and that we both had, that if you take another step, like, this is going down. Like, there's no going back from here. And I just remember his white trash ass with no shirt on, just with his sweats on or whatever, in the front of the house, just kind of having a little cowboy stare down right there with us. And I think that was the day that we kind of decided, like, hey, you do your thing, I'll do my thing, you leave me alone. And that was kind of that. And you know, I think the abuse stopped when I was sophomore, kind of in high school or whatever, and just left in my own thing, you know, because I was at the age now to where, you know, he knew I wasn't fucking around. It's gonna
be you're self-sufficient enough.
Problem, right? Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
well, he probably was acting out because he did get his ass beat, and now he's the big man that can.
No, I never whooped his ass. I never.
No, I mean from like his father,
right.
You know. Now he's like, oh, now I can do it, you know.
Right.
Until you got to the size where he wasn't the badass anymore. That there was going to be an actual fight at that point.
I just remember the good feeling of looking him in the eye, and then him looking and sizing up all three of us, and just kind of, you're not going to win this one today.
What's his build like? I need to visualize this guy.
he's my build. He's just got more weight on him. He's exactly my size, but he's just heavier. You know, he might be a half inch taller than me, but he's pretty much just me. You know, we kind of look alike. We have the same mannerisms. You know, it's just, we're a lot alike.
Do you know where he is today?
Oh yeah. He lives in his trailer off of Gerber Road. He literally lives in my grandmother's trailer when my grandmother passed away. You know, single wide in South Sac.
And then you said your mom passed when she was 52. Did you guys have a relationship when she passed?
So that's the thing. No, not really. You know, I was with Melissa. We weren't married yet. We had just bought our first house. No kids. You know, I had been kind of disconnected from my mom. So at that time, in my early 20s, Melissa and I were together. I was trying to do good. You know, I had gotten out of jail when I was 18. I was trying to do better. Had a full-time job. And I was just not communicating with my mom. She was alive. My grandmother was alive. My uncle was alive. Everybody was doing their own thing. But she was an alcoholic. So I just didn't want anything to do with that. You know, I didn't have any time for her in my life.
Yeah.
But I would talk to her every now and then. And you know, I would go visit her once a year or something like that. Or go up there with my sister or whatever. And, oh, man, I'm trying to remember. So my grandmother passed away first. My grandmother, Ruth, her mom, she died when she was in her 80s. So they all... Where do you start this story at? So when my parents got divorced, my mom moved up to live with my grandmother and my grandfather in her house on the lake in Eastman in Fall River, California. And my mom and my grandmother lived there ever since until they all died. At some point, my Uncle Don, who was my mom's brother, and I think he was the younger brother by 3 years, he lived in Arizona, and I only met him a few times. You know, he was also an alcoholic and just whatever. But he was a little baby of my grandmother Ruth, who's like her only son. Eventually, he had ended up living up there with them full time with my grandmother. So it was just the three of those people just feeding off each other, you know, just living in that house. My grandmother didn't drink, though, which is a weird thing. She would just enable those two to drink together. I think she liked the control of her two children in her house that needed her to like feed off of her tit, like just weirdo shit. Weird, just some sick stuff. But my grandmother ended up passing away from like congestive heart failure in her 80s, right? She was a strong, tough old broad. And my grandmother and my Uncle Don were left alone there in that house together. And my sister and I knew that it wasn't a good situation. Like, you know, you're both alcoholics. You're both like, there's no way you can live a normal life in this house. We need to get you guys separated and get you out of here. Mm-hmm. So we made like a gung-ho intervention trip to go up there. My mother, my sister and I, Melissa went with me, and my sister's husband at the time, traveled up there to, you know, deal with my grandmother's passing. She didn't have a funeral because nobody's going to go see her ass. But,
sorry.
Yeah.
I was waiting for you. Got hella serious and nobody's going to see that bitch. Is that?
Yeah. Dude, I'm not going to lie. You said
she
what
had
I
no
was thinking.
friends. Yeah,
I don't even fuck
no
with her.
friends.
I don't even know her.
It'd be the four of you. You guys were already
You know
there.
what's sad? Out of maybe 10 of my family members on both sides of my family passed away. There's only been one funeral.
Damn.
Like, everybody else can just give a fuck.
I mean,
like,
that says a lot right there.
No shit. Like, yeah, my Aunt Cindy's the only one that got a funeral, and that's because she worked for a school and she did some good in this life, possibly, right?
Yeah.
So my grandmother passed away. They both live up there in this house in the small ass town. We go up there to try to separate them and tell my mom, like, look, grandma's dead. The money's gone. You don't have a job. He doesn't have a job. You're alcoholics. Let's try to get you on the right path. And she just went, at this time in her life, she had what's like maybe alcoholic amnesia or something. I forget what they call it, but she just was right in her mind. Mm-hmm. She was just different.
Her brain was pickled.
Yeah, right. Her brain was just pickled. And she just started getting belligerent. She wasn't drunk. This was just, she was dead sober. This was like early in the morning. We show up, we did surprise her, kind of like, we're here. And we just started sitting her down and saying, we need to get you out of here. Like, hey, let's sell grandma's house, or let's just get you the fuck out of here and get you an apartment or something in the city where my sister lives. And she just was like, no, this is where I belong. This is where I live. You little fucking bastards are trying to ruin my life. And just started getting all ignorant about it. And I just was not having none of this. I didn't have the patience for any of it.
No.
So just all these triggers and everything just started coming back from the way that they fucked my life over already. So I just literally, I stood up, and I remember my sister, my wife, Melissa there, and her husband and my uncle was fucking passed on the couch. And I just remember telling her, like, all right, stand up, Mom. I'm not going to see you again. This is it. Like, I'm leaving. Yeah. You're done. You're going to stay here. And I made her give me a hug. And it was kind of sad. I remember being choked up about it, but I just kind of like forced her. I was like, give me a hug. I'm not going to see you again. No joke. And I hugged her and said, I loved you and I'm not going to see you again. And
was that it?
That's it. And me and Melissa just took off in the truck and just came home. And I think maybe 6 months to a year later, she was dead. You know, she just, the neighborhood found, so my uncle ended up passing away first. And when they both lived there, he was a degenerate, no kids. Yeah, I think he was like 49 or some shit like that. And he ended up he had like a bad gash on his leg, and he ended up not taking care of it, and ended up getting sepsis and gangrene and all that. And he refused medical care. The doctor, the ambulance or somebody came to the house or something. My mom called or whatever, and he refused to go. And he just died. He just passed away. And they came and collected his body and yada yada. I think his ex-wife like got his body and did something with it or whatever. But so he was dead, and then my mom was left there all alone. And you know, my sister was obviously worried. I think she had some connection with her. She would still like go see her or something. But she ended up, my mom dying from a cerebral hemorrhage. I guess one night she got so faded she just fell and hit her head and died on the floor. The neighbors found her a couple days later. Just
what a sad life.
Yeah,
that's a
just
horrible way to go.
Right?
Not surrounded by anybody.
Yeah, just no funeral, not surrounded by anybody she loves, just gone. And yeah, just, you know, it's funny you mentioned about people reacting differently to death or just I worry sometimes that something's going to happen dramatically in my life. Like, knock on wood, something happens to my family, and I'm not going to react accordingly because I've been through so much in my life to where people are going to judge me for not. Yeah. I don't know. It's a scary thought.
No, that's a really real like trauma response, because I feel like in my own family, we've had a lot of stuff happen. I mean, our whole life's same, but like the last couple of years, just, you know, bad cards. And one sibling specifically, everybody's like, dude, do you like give a fuck? Like, is it like, But it's people, and I know because I know him best that it's this is like how he's compartmentalizing everything. You know, my other siblings like don't understand him as well, but it is that perception of like you don't fucking care. You literally, but it's like he's been through a lot, and people don't get that like the way he handles and reacts to things is like crisis mode. Like I have to remain calm.
Right.
Because if I don't, I'm going to fuck everybody in this room up.
Yeah.
Like that's, I know how his brain works, you know? And it's like when you go through so much trauma, like that's really like, I just read this thing I was actually telling him about today that like I am better now, but have been in the past a lot in my 20s and my 30s and even recently an emotionally reactive person. Right. And then I read this thing the other day that said like sometimes people react the way they handle best being in survival mode. Like when somebody is giving you feedback you don't like, sometimes your brain is just like, I'm in survival mode, I'm gonna fucking lash out, right? So it's like going through all that, like I'm sure that's exactly how you feel, right? I'm sure there's been moments when you were young that it's like how did you break the cycle? How did you not put hands on everybody that upset you? Or did you
when you were growing up?
I mean, I went through a time where anger was a huge thing for me. I think that's why I went to 13 schools, because I just got kicked out of some. And I joke with people that they just couldn't fit my academic curriculum correctly to where.
That is also true, I think, with a lot
in the 90s especially.
I know. Right? Like they box everybody in. It's like that's not how everybody learns.
Yeah, it's one size fits all in the 90s, dude.
I went to this, Smedberger Sheldon. It was a brand new school. My dad wanted me to go there because it was just.
That's in Elk Grove, right?
New school,
like
Southside Elk Grove,
That's where Mark
like
went.
just outside of South Sac.
Yeah.
And I remember getting kicked out of that school. Well, leading up to getting kicked out of that school, I was kind of butting heads with the teacher, a female teacher there, and I wasn't used to their preppiness and just correctness where you can't swear in the classroom or just whatever.
Yeah.
And she was gonna win.
She's from South Sac, Iraq.
I said to her, you just need to go get laid to relax, like just chill. And this is middle school.
Here's scandals for that.
Yeah. And I remember that they called the sheriff. They had me down.
The sheriff.
Oh, she did need to get laid. Goddamn.
They called the police, and I remember going to the principal's office. They had me sit down and
do this whole.
My life? They had me go through this whole thing, and I just remember this is such a fucking joke. Just send me back to my normal school where they can deal with this. Yeah. It's just crazy, yeah. And I think I would. I had a lot of anger issues when I was a kid. Melissa can attest to that.
How the fuck could you not?
Yeah. And like until you have the tools, and I would imagine that you're still like, even today, I would imagine you still have to like tap into that shit. Like the resources that you've learned along the years.
Yeah. I mean, it took a long time. I think I've had a lot to learn. We've broken up twice. I've had to propose twice. Mm-hmm. We've gone through our issues, and I've definitely still have issues with that. But I think I'm in a lot better place today, being a father and just being kind of where I'm at. And I'm just a lot more mellow. Honestly, the one thing that we haven't covered yet that really changed my life is that when I was 18, I was working at Black Angus, and I was kind of in and out of high school. I don't think I was really going to high school. Mm-hmm. I was one of those kids that just didn't really go to school a lot. I was one of the only kids that would ditch elementary school to go steal hubcaps and just
smoke cigarettes and still
smoke cigarettes, still letters.
Right. So I wasn't doing the school thing, and we got in some trouble. Me and some buddies, just up to no good. We decided to make some Molotov cocktails one night, and just being bored, go throwing some random shit, right? So we go to school. We go to one of the schools and throw them at a sign. We go throw them at some other sign, like stupid shit.
Damn, and you're from the 90s. You had to like look that shit up in a book. There was no Google.
Yeah, well, I mean, we knew how to do it. Just pour gas in
Probably
a bottle,
learned
put
from
a rag
your
in there.
parents.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like I have an uncle, It's just like, oh yeah. So yeah, we made some Molotov cocktails. Got in some trouble. We ended up getting caught by the sheriff's department and getting arrested. So I was just 18, and I spent a week in jail. It was over Christmas too. It was like happened perfectly to change my life, and I thank everything. I don't know if I believe in a God, but some higher power kind of saved me that day, because we got arrested, went to jail, and I spent the worst time and it was so busy at the Sac County downtown jail. I was on the top floor of their intake level, where you do 23 hours. You don't get a pen, a pencil, no reading, no nothing. And 18-year-olds being a kid, it was just life-changing. Like, it was just insane.
Damn, you were over 18 too?
Yeah, I was just 18.
Just turned 18.
Just 18, so I was an adult. So I had to go through the whole intake process, like, let me see your tattoos, what do you claim? Like I'm just some dumb fucking kid. I'm not in a gang, like, whatever. And so I remember being in there, and in those 8 days, it was just eye-opening, going through so many... So I guess what we had done had got us $250,000 bail because we think it was 9/11 attached. It was after 9/11 sometime.
Yeah.
So firebombing, terrorist activities, some stupid shit like that. So we couldn't afford bail. That's me and my buddy that were in there with me. So we were in there for 8 days until we can get arraigned and get our bail dropped from lawyers. And luckily my uncle's in and out of prison. So we had a good family lawyer that finally was able to do it. But in those 8 days, I had several roommates in my cellmates that were just eye-opening to me. And I actually, in my cell block that I was in, ran into some high school buddies that I went to school with or knew, like, acquaintances that had done armed robbery.
Yeah.
And they were facing a lot heavier charges than I was, but their bail was less.
Yeah.
You just fucking held up at Denny's at gunpoint and your bail is lower than
a bottle
a firebomb. Like, what are you doing? But all jokes aside, like, I mean, they were facing a lot of years and they were scared as shit. Like, it was just eye-opening to see that and just seeing all these different types of people, homeless people, gangbangers, just all these different people together and just seeing all the shittiness. And then at the end of the, when I'm in my cell, just looking out the window and looking back out there and hearing all this going on and just thinking, what am I doing? Yeah. I'm going to end up just like all these fucking trashy ass people in here. No offense to everybody who's in there now, but going through it. But I'm just going to end up.
I don't know that they're listening to this podcast.
They might,
hey, how the fuck do you know?
I mean, that is our target audience.
Right? Yeah. So it's just.
We should actually pitch that.
Just thinking that I was going to end up doing this and being this system for the rest of my life, I had to change it. Mm-hmm. And the thing that solidified it is that the day that we got arraigned and we had our bail dropped with our lawyer, they dropped it to where you can get out. And me and my friend are in the court together. His lawyer bailed for some reason, didn't show up. So we go in there together and our lawyer drops the bail to $25,000. So we only get 10% of that. So we can afford this. We're like all excited. We can get out. Yay. We're going to post bail. And we end up going back through the basement and you have to ride the elevator back up to your floor. So me and him are all excited. We're all joking like, oh shit, we're going to eat some real food when we get out, yada, yada, yada. And we're just chopping it up, having a blast. And all of a sudden this elevator, we're in there by ourselves. There's no CO or anything. And behind us, we just hear this like clearing voice. And no shit, we turn around and this older black guy. He's like a Morgan Freeman, like in my eye.
Who's in the elevator?
In the elevator. We didn't even know it.
Dude, they were probably just on such a fucking high.
Shadows,
we were so stoked that we're going to get out within the next 24 hours. We didn't give a shit. We couldn't even see this guy. He was just sitting there all quiet and he just clears his throat and says, hey, sorry to break up your party. I know you guys are super happy and I understand whatever, but I want to impart on you guys that whatever you're doing, like I just left court myself and I just got my third strike. And I just had to tell my family, don't come visit me. Don't come see me. I'm never going to see you again. Like, he was so stoked about it, just straight up. And I don't know if he was trying to scare us, whether he's lying or not, but I mean, it just was perfect.
He's just always in there. It's like, that's their fucking tactic.
It's probably a sheriff officer.
Dude, that motherfucker's always in there and just they're like, there's like 7 people are listening. It's like, that
every time.
It fucking worked. I mean, now they have a tax-paying citizen. Like, damn,
that's
done.
me, right?
Yeah.
That's
Boom.
me.
It's crazy that is a pivotal moment for you and you chose that when you saw all this stuff happen prior to that. That was just like, that was your life. And it could have easily been you. That could be you living in a trailer on your grandmother's like property today. And it just boiled down to like a choice after a choice after a choice and like slowly getting yourself back on like that.
Dude, and honestly, like you are not a statistic. Like, I don't think people realize how fucking easy it is to be a criminal. How much easier it is to be a criminal.
That's an easy way to do it.
How much easier it is to just follow what your family tells you. How much easier it is just to say fuck it. Because there's a lot of families like the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? Yeah. A lot of families, like, they don't want you to be educated. They want you to stay in this like cycle of fucking, because that
their
is
comfort zone.
Dude, I literally was telling like, I don't know, someone the other day where I'm like, there are days for me within my own like healing journey where I'm like, sometimes I wish I just didn't give a fuck and I could just be who Stacy is stuck right here at 41 for the rest of my life.
Right.
Because just the amount of work you have to put in every single fucking day to not like
just go
the fuck off on
right.
somebody
right.
or like give up on life,
right.
you know, like everybody has it hard in a different way, but it's like going through the trauma you've been through. Right. It would have been easier for you to just be like, fuck it, let me just do this petty crime shit, and then it all adds up like it did for fucking Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I think that's like one thing that I remember you saying that I had a story where we were at that wedding and I said I was put in my uncle's room where I crushed all his hypodermic needles. Yeah. And for years I battled with it, especially getting with Melissa, just being with somebody that's so different, opposite of me. You know, she obviously had her troubles, but I'd always belittle her troubles not being as great as my troubles. Like, oh my God, you went through this and it's a joke, you know, but then I made that realization, you know, and I really wanted to go on a way of educating myself about what the fuck am I thinking about? What am I doing? How do I work this thing in my head to my advantage and just stop being taken advantage of by all these fuckers that just don't give a shit about me in the system? And how can I get what I want out of life and just not sell myself out short? And I would always, you know, this uneducated side of me would always just argue that I like wanted a medal for what I've been through. Like, oh my, I was beat and I've gone through all this.
Look
my
at me
parents
now.
are a piece of shit. But I would always equate that people couldn't understand my pain because they didn't go through it.
The exact same thing. Yeah.
Right. And I would catch myself like saying, well, you know, my pain is at this level and your pain is at this level and mine goes much deeper than that and you can't relate. Well, I don't know if it was a book or something I read or watched or whatever, but you know, everybody's pain is relative to pain itself. So if you were stabbed by a thumbtack and you bled out a little bit and that's the worst pain you've ever experienced, or somebody who got a gunshot wound and almost bled out, that was the worst pain they experienced. Both are equal in your mental mind. It's the same.
It's the worst pain they've ever experienced.
So how do you quantify this person saying that their pain is much worse than holding it over their head because they just got stabbed by a thumbtack? You can't.
Yeah. I mean, I think
like it makes sense on paper, but you can't sit here and just hold it over somebody's head that your pain is so much. What do you want from that? Like, do you want an award? Do you want a pat
some
on the
people
back?
makes them feel better to minimize other people's experiences.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah.
I do think our society is more accepting now of at least attempting. Maybe it's just me being hopeful, but I think that our society is a little more understanding of like, not to live in that space of like I've been through a lot, but to like try to at least attempt to understand why certain people behave the way they behave.
Right.
Because when kids or like, you know, kids that grow into adults have the amount of trauma you have, right? Like just because you were able to make it out and like obviously we're sitting in your beautiful home with your beautiful family. Right. Some people don't also have the same mental capacity to do what you've done.
Right.
And I'm speaking as like my own experience too in my own family, right? Like I'm very guilty of like, well, you chose a different path and we grew up the same way. How come you couldn't do it like me and educate yourself and surround yourself with this? I mean, I have a beautiful support system that's not blood family. How come blah, blah, blah. But then when I've really let my ego stop talking and be like, we're different. Yeah. You know, we're different people. So it's like, I do agree with that. You only know your own pain as much as what you've experienced. But I do think like holding space to try to understand, like, if you do fuck up, you don't get a pass, but it's also like, but yeah, I don't know. Do you guys know what I mean?
I do. I mean, I think about that a lot, even with like the you know, homeless crisis that we're in right now. Mm-hmm. You know, and it is. Everyone has like their own level of capacity of what they can and can't do. But I couldn't agree with you more about like, you know, we're always trying to like compare our worst traumas to your worst trauma, and it's just different. It shows up different, but it doesn't. It's still relevant, and it's still like the same time. So 18-year-old you to 37-year-old you, like how has these traumas and really like all of the unlearning you had to do, how did that show up for you? Like depression, anxiety? Did you struggle with any addictions of your own?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it's just being kind of workaholic kind of addiction for me, just kind of not focusing on my personal life and just focusing on bettering myself. You know, I was kind of a gym rat when we were in our early 20s and just kind of focusing my energy on all these different things outside of something negative. I have gone through a lot of different changes. I am one person that doesn't believe that people say people can't change. Well, I'm the opposite. I think people can change. Like I'm a testament to that. People can change. Like I'm no longer the shithead, knucklehead, person. I guess in an instance, sometimes I can subject myself and get back to that. If I'm triggered enough to where you put me in a corner, maybe I could come to that. But
survival mode.
I mean, people can change. I mean, it's just because I was raised like that and I was, raised by some degenerate losers doesn't mean that I am a degenerate loser. So
that's something you have to like really tell yourself every day, probably too, though. Like that, it's easier to believe that you are that,
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean,
that's like weird that people would even say like people can't change. Like to me, that's people saying that are the ones that like are not progressing, and you're probably not progressing. Yeah. You're like people can't change. It's like,
but so many fucking people say that.
Or
that's like an old way of.
I think they're just speaking out of anger. They've probably don't
have the courage to change. Like you have had the courage to change.
I think they've been hurt as well. That they just want that excuse for the person that hurt them or done them wrong to say, well, no, people can't change because this is what they did to me.
Yeah.
Or they're just set in their way that where they have to believe that or else their world just falls apart.
Yeah.
Because like if people can change, then that means George, who cheated on me or did all this other thing, will now one day be happy with wife and kids, and he's not going to be this person that hurt me like that. Like that can't be a reality. Like, it's like, or this Tony that sits here today isn't going to be the person that did these horrible things in the past.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure any victim that I have out there that I've wronged in the past probably doesn't want to believe that I've changed.
Yeah.
It's a victim mentality, I think, in a sense.
Yeah. How has all this like trauma impacted your own personal relationships? Like you've kind of given us a little bit into, like alluded to things with your wife,
right?
Kind of not really saying anything about your kids, but like how is that? I'm assuming wife because that's your most interpersonal relationship.
Yeah, Melissa and I have been together for so long, like 2005.
Do you?
I think it's impacted us a lot. I think I dealt with a lot of anger issues when I was younger. Being around my dad, still being in a relationship with him, and being triggered by him and his needs, or just the business relationship that we had, wanting to be part of my life, and I guess maybe want him to be part of our life, and just the subjective anger that I'd be, just that angst and that anxiety that he would give me in my life, and just the feelings of having to be in the inner circle with him. It just caused me stress and anger. And I just remember not having a good grip on anger in a sense. I was just short tempered. I wasn't level headed. There's there's a few holes in the walls in our old houses and things, it was just, I just didn't communicate as well. A lot of my life was, my family is just reactive.
Yeah.
It's kind of like my sister, we joke about it. What's that caveman cartoon where everything is dangerous, you don't go do that or something like that? Yeah. Everything was reactive. So where if something hurts, you cover it up or something. Like nothing was thought out. It was just reactive. Like if it's hurting, you hit it. Make it go away. Just make it. You just punch it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a lot of my life up until I matured and learned that, well, no, there's different ways to navigate through our life that doesn't require you physical altercation or yelling, screaming, or me taking advantage of somebody, or just, just my egotistical wanting to get over on somebody and my power tripping or whatever it was, just.
Yeah.
It's a level of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Some people have it, some people don't. It's unfortunate. We see it all over in our lives.
Yeah.
The lack of emotional intelligence that so many people walk around with, I
also think there's like so much pressure though on like people in their 20s to have it all figured out.
Yeah.
It's like we're supposed to graduate high school at, like, for me at 17, and like, what do you want to do with your life? And it's like, fuck.
Yeah, what?
Like I'm 41.
I was gonna crush
what
this.
Life?
Yeah, like,
on your forehead, just bam.
It's like, let me figure out life, and then you get into your 20s, and it's like, I'm supposed to be this like fucking and then I think about like people who are like married with kids in their 20s. I'm like, fucking I feel like I'm 30 right now, and I'm 41. I can't even imagine having kids.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's a lot of pressure on people to like have it figured out like so young.
Yeah, it's
I don't know if you feel this way too, but I feel like when you go through as much trauma as you've been through, you feel 10 years behind developmentally, especially because you said you experienced neglect.
Yeah.
You weren't given the appropriate like nourishment to develop, like,
for sure,
like Melissa said, your emotional intelligence.
I think that's something we deal with even today. Like I'm kind of, I may not seem like it, but I'm kind of a cold individual. You know,
I
Melissa,
would never get that vibe from you ever.
Well,
well, listen, guys.
Not even from the first time I met you. We're just that cool.
I think
we're just that cool.
I think that's the thing about me. If I can set my ego aside somewhat, I think I can kind of be a chameleon. I've learned to fit into a lot of different group. You know, going to 13 different schools, I have to meld with a lot of different folks.
Nah, bro, I would have sniffed you out.
Yeah, right.
That's true, I would have. I got a douche meter. I would have known immediately.
No, I don't think it's a douchiness, but it's just it's a chameleon aspect to where I can.
It's survival.
Reading people and
adaptability,
adaptability. Like if I got a cake with the nerds today, I'm cake with the nerds because they got extra lunch or they got there's an extra cigarette. I can.
And they're really the cool ones, actually.
No shit.
The nerds hold all the cigarettes.
Yeah, the nerds are the cool ones.
So I think that's an aspect that I have, but I can be like Melissa's called me on it. Like I can just be kind of cold, you know. And I think that's something I deal with the boys. You know, she's really loving, and I can be just kind of out there a little bit as far as the other side of it, I guess. Like it's hard to explain, but I'm kind of robotic in a sense to where I'm black and white, and I think a lot of guys are like this in a sense, but I can be a little bit worse to where I'm just, you know, especially with I don't let things go in a sense to where I need to know if you're on my side or not, because if you're not on my side, you're out.
It's if you're with me or you're against me.
Yeah, exactly. You're with me or you're not. And if you're not
tell your
with
kids
me,
that every night.
Yeah.
It's fucking mafia. Are you a Diaz or you're not a Diaz?
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Remember her mom said we couldn't make that cake?
I mean, to be fair though, you're just seeing how to truly love in this relationship. You're actively learning how to truly love, and Melissa's so loving, which is amazing because she's like probably part of what's teaching you that as well.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Through her parenting, and she has an amazing mom as far as I know, and so like she got to, I'm sure she has her own stuff. We'll get her on a different podcast.
Right, yeah, exactly.
But it's like you're actually learning it right now as you're going through fatherhood.
For sure.
So it's
not just to love, but to accept love.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I feel like for some people that's harder. It's easy to like output, but what about when you take it in?
Yeah.
Like, do you feel like with your wife, are you able to accept her love? You said she's so loving. Do you think you're able to accept it?
Yeah,
we won't tell her. We won't show her this.
Right,
no.
yeah, right.
She's not gonna watch this.
She's banned. She's banned. You guys aren't. Yeah.
She watches.
She's
our
not
episodes.
a subscriber. She's lame.
She doesn't like and follow.
Lame.
God, she's lame.
Yeah, I think it's something that's definitely. You know, if I think about it, black and white, everybody's got their pros and cons. I'm sure I'm not as the perfect husband that everybody would want.
That doesn't exist.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. Nobody's perfect. You know, nobody's a perfect wife or husband, but I don't know. I'm sure there's shortcomings with me romantically or just lovingly, but you know, we can only do the best we can, you know. And
you guys been together a long time.
Yeah, and we've been together a long time.
Listen, she deserves everything. Melissa, you deserve it all. But you know, yeah.
You know, we both work hard, and we both, you know, having these kids and the family that we have now, I wouldn't take it back for the world. And it's funny thinking about it in a sense. We were talking about it like a year or two, or sometime when they were younger. We were at like a round table or some restaurant. We were just sitting there having a good old time, just being with the boys and watching them eat and stuff. And I just remember feeling sad. And I was just like, why don't it was at a spaghetti factory. We were at dinner at a spaghetti factory having a glass of wine. And the boys were eating spaghetti and we're just having a nice little time. And we talked about this like a week later, but somehow it came out. I was like, I was just feeling sad. And I couldn't put my finger on why do I feel sad? Like I got a beautiful wife, beautiful kids, can afford a meal. Like what's going on? And I think I was able to pinpoint it and talk about it and communicate that it was sad because it's something I never got when I was, you know, watching my kids sometimes have the life that I never had makes me sad.
Yeah,
and that's a weird feeling, you know, like, you know.
And I'm sure guilt comes with that, and so you know what I mean. Like then you're feeling worse because you're feeling guilty. Like why wouldn't I be happy that my children are like
emotions,
right? Yeah, it's it's kind of weird, and but on the flip side, being somebody that's kind of raised that way by wolves or whatnot, how am I going to raise sons that are tough, you know? And just seeing these boys how they are sometimes, it's just like
especially in this society, because my little nephew, he's the sweetest little soul, and fuck, sometimes I'm just like, dude, the world's gonna eat you up, and then guess what's gonna happen? Auntie's gonna fucking kill everybody.
Exactly, gonna murder them. Yeah, I think that you learn there's different levels of toughness, because I'm defending myself here, because everybody's like wants to protect me and my feelings and like I'm not strong enough, but I will fucking murder somebody.
She
like,
really will.
I will murder.
My friend
somebody.
is like, oh, like Melissa's so sweet. My brother always calls her an angel. I'm like, she's a fucking bitch, dude. Yeah, she be talking shit.
She calls me a bitch every time we're together.
She's my favorite bitch. Yeah. But no, Melissa will give you the shirt off her back. She would literally die for you. But like, she's also a fucking snake. Right? It just takes her a long. No, it's snake in a sense of like she will fucking bite you and put her venom in you if you mess with somebody she loves.
Yeah. Right.
In that sense, she's like waiting in the grass, right? Yeah. You fuck with her, babes. Get your ass.
She'll eat you.
She'll get your ass.
Right. So I don't think we should be scared that your boy, like I freaking love your boys. I think they're gonna be.
They're sweethearts. Yeah.
I don't think that's something you need to
on that bouncy ball. Like, I'm so
right.
So how do you feel? Like, I know you're kind of talking through it right now, but like how all of this, like how is it shaping fatherhood for you, or how is it, as you started to like think about and talk about having children, like were you scared? Were you like,
oh, for sure.
Did you always want kids?
No, I mean, I honestly, when I was younger, I never thought about it. I never really thought about it until I kind of was with Melissa and her family. Obviously, was like the pressure point of wanting kids. The woman's family always wants her to have children, and I know that was a pressure point, but I was just scared out of my mind. I think it took us a long time. We've been together since 2004, 2005, and we got married in 2011, and Anthony was born in 2013. So we had been together for quite some time. And I think I was just scared. I didn't want to be my father. My biggest thing was I didn't want to be my father. I wanted to be somewhere in my life where I'm mentally at a capacity where if I have to be up at 2 a.m. and he mouths off at me, I'm not going to just fuck him up.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know,
drop kid a fucking
drop
kid a fucking toddler.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be so easy.
Oh yeah, it's the hardest thing I've ever had to do was raise kids, be a husband and be a father. And it took a long time, and it has been easy, but
your kids are still little, so you're actually still actively
you're in it.
You're not done. I hate to break it to you,
we'll
but
be on Dateline a year from now, like fucking, they're all gone.
We're all fuck. We have this guy on our fucking podcast.
You got at least like 11 years plus left.
Podcast. Can you believe we sat in his house? Like, holy shit.
We sat in his house. We sat in his dungeon.
Fucking monster. Yeah, I mean, I feel like this next question is like, did it help you overcome your personal trauma or make it worse? And I feel like you've kind of already answered that. Like, it seems like it has made it, like being a father has made your personal trauma, like you've really learned from it.
Oh yeah,
and been like a great dad because of it.
Oh yeah,
even though you clearly don't feel that way, but it's like
I've seen you with your damn children.
With your children, we're outsiders, right? Like watching you with your kids.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I feel fulfilled. I feel content. I just feel, you come to that point in your life. I'm kind of just, I don't know. I was telling my buddies at work, it's just kind of like, hey, I'm where I'm at in life. I'm kind of done. Like I'm looking at the sunset now. I've got the wife, the kids, the house. Like I'm just kind of rolling at ease now. Nothing to worry about.
All you need to do is build that other house for me
on
the other
side. Right? Exactly.
You got a babysitter right here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at a midlife crisis, if anything. Like, hey.
Might get a vet. Might get a Ferrari in like 10 years. Who knows?
What's going to turn me up now? Because now it's just kind of like all easy street.
Dude, you and Melissa are like in a fucking drop top. Like her hair's in the wind.
We're going to go buy an RV. And
she'd be down.
Like, right?
Dude, yes, please buy an RV.
So what are some of the things that like still I'm certain it shows like different things show up, but what triggers you now? And it could be with your children, it could be with your wife, it could be in work, it could be any. What are you finding that seems to trigger you most?
That's a good one. I mean, I feel like I'm not triggered a lot nowadays because life is so easy for me necessarily outside of work, but I think a trigger for me is to be out of control.
Yeah.
The big thing for me, going through this trauma, I need my life. Like, you guys probably don't know this enough, but I'm not a control freak. Like, I'm not controlling Melissa, but I'm just kind of like a clean freak. I need to have an itinerary. Like, I need to know where things are, where things are going to go.
Mm-hmm.
so for me, a trigger is just not knowing that. Like if I have to spend another night sleeping in a car behind a bar, I just not know where my life is going, I'm gonna fucking flip out.
Yeah. Wake up not knowing who's passed out, who's
like
even in the house.
I need to know what the game plan is way down the road. So simple triggers for me, I don't know. It's I don't really get triggered anymore. I guess listening to certain music can put me in a mood. Like obviously, I listened to a lot of Eminem when I was younger. A lot of like that anger, hate music and shit.
Obviously. I'm a white ghetto dude.
I was in South Sac and I had to cross 8 Mile.
Yeah. But
they made that movie after you or what?
Yeah, right. No, I didn't have a friend that shot himself
Rabbit,
or whatever.
Was
Yeah,
Rabbit.
Yeah, Rabbit. Yeah. Damn, you really know this movie.
Yeah, she does.
I was also 8 Mile.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know. There's not really any triggers for me. I mean, it's the weirdest thing for me is just being in the life that I am now, being so far and removed from being homeless as a kid and being abused as a kid to being in this life. And even the people I work with have degrees and are don't even know half the it's just weird. Like I work with Boy Scouts and just just
that's triggering.
Yeah, it's just kind of triggering just being with people that just can't relate. It's kind of exhausting, and some days I just feel like I'm just gonna lose it. Like I feel uncomfortable some days being in this easy of a lifestyle.
Do you feel like you code switch?
What's that?
Do you feel like you code switch? Like for me, I get asked this question, like, do you code switch at work? I'm like, I pretty much just don't curse at work, and if there's like certain people around. But like the Stacy you're talking to right now, this is teacher Stacy. Like I don't really, I don't switch. But some people, what they call code switching is like how I'm talking slang or whatever. I almost said rapping. Like
yeah.
I almost said
drop a beat. Boom, boom, boom.
She raps regularly. I think we found our Eminem.
Go rabbit. Be rabbit.
This is our rabbit right here.
There's no Mekhi Phifer.
I like how this was how she was doing.
Fuck, I almost said rapping. Anyway, code switching is basically where you like turn it off when you're in a professional environment.
You know what? I don't know. Maybe it's the ego in me, but I don't feel like I was ever that Ebonics kind of ghetto. Yeah. I don't know. It was just, I'm blaming on Calvin and Hobbes, man. I had a good vocabulary as a kid, and again, that's basically me being the chameleon kid where I could come off as an educated individual, but then again, I just, there's a pistol in my side door behind my panel. Like, it's just different.
Do you feel like you struggle with like imposter syndrome? Like you feel like, do you ever just like look around like,
for sure.
The fuck am I? Yeah. Like, am I pretending to be here? Like,
well, yeah. When I hear buddies at work just talking about how they went to a preparatory school and
you're like, come again?
I'm like, what? I was,
spell that.
I smoked my first blunt in third grade. Like, what are you talking about?
I was fucking lighting beds on fire, bitch.
Yeah.
That's more impressive. You lived through that.
Yeah. It's just, I think so. I think that's the trauma I deal with on a day to day. Like, there's some things I just can't forget. Some things I've been through, with my childhood that it's just dark,
Burned in.
Yeah.
It's that same thing, that same equation where it's just some people see black, but my black is so deep to where it just can't cut me. It's, I don't know, some days I don't know, just when your mom and your father and the things you go through are so, you feel kind of soulless sometimes. You're just kind of dead inside, you're just kind of like, when, I don't know, just the things you think about, like, your grandmother spitting in your face, or, your dad want to commit suicide in a hotel and you just go get a burrito and just hope that he kills himself, or the first time you meet one of your mom's boyfriends and he's like, I'm the most important thing in your life, this kid in the back doesn't mean shit to you, and she's just like, yeah, that's okay, you got it. It's just like, or I don't know
how insane all that, like, how have you coped? Like, do you, if you're comfortable sharing this, like, have you done intense therapy? Because what I'm hearing when you speak is like, you're saying like going so deep. I think in certain levels of trauma, you literally forget or like put those memories in a certain part of your brain that you can't unlock. And certain like healing modalities like hypnotherapy or traditional therapy or meditation, like, you know, that's how you like work through. Have any of those worked for you, or when you're triggered, like how do you cope?
Yeah, you know, I've seen a psychologist throughout the years, just when we were going through issues and things like that. I've done the float swallow therapy. I've done meditation. I've read up on things that I need to kind of find my center and just kind of be grounded. I think that helps me kind of let go of the sense of just, I'm kind of a nihilist, you know, where I just almost don't believe in anything. Like everything is just kind of like ether. It's just floating out there. Like there's really no rhyme or reason to anything. It's just, we are only here for the now. There is no past. There is no future. It's just what's here. And is that going to be you helping or hurting yourself or others? Because everything else doesn't exist. And, you know, I don't know.
You think that's a trauma response?
Yeah, it's kind of a scary question, just sitting here, and maybe it's something I haven't come across yet, but I've been so busy in my life, from having children, married, having children, to getting to where we're at in life now, that maybe I'm finding more time
to ask those questions
and kind of reflect on that. To, who knows, you know, I don't know. Like, I guess like her mom has been through a lot of trauma as well. And she says her 30s and 40s were some of her toughest times, because that's when she kind of settled down, and then she was able to look back on that. But I don't know. I hope I'm not just keeping myself as busy in an avoiding therapy with life and work and everything, that I'm just, I don't know. I can think about those things and I repeat these things. And part of me was worried about talking about these things on this podcast, of how this may trigger me and put me in a mood for a couple weeks or just whatever. But I don't know, man. I just,
well, you know, regardless, like, even agreeing to do this with us, like, Melissa and I are obviously supportive, because that is real, right? We've had guests before say, you know, we've left, and really, like, basically putting stuff back out in the universe has brought things up. From my own experience, we did an episode about, you know, my upbringing, and that definitely put my brother and I in a little spin for a while. But I do think, like you said, being a workaholic, that is another form of addiction and a trauma response. And your mother-in-law is not wrong. When you really sit down and you get a little more settled in life, shit will come back up, and it really is just how you cope with it. But you have such a healthy understanding of your own self. Like, that's what I'm hearing this whole time you're talking. Like, you're very aware of your own self as, like, not only a victim of trauma, but, like, as a husband, as a father, as you're a person, a separate entity outside of those things, right? Right. Like, being a father and being a husband is an enhancement to who you are as a person. That's not who you are. Right. You know, so it's like, you might, and, you know, we got some tools in our tool belt.
Yeah, I mean,
we're not professionals by any means.
Nobody's,
just two fucked up
is. Dr. Phil's probably not a professional. You know, he's probably, maybe he'll watch
and
this.
I fucking hate Dr. Phil for the record. On record. Fuck you. I hate Dr. Phil, dude.
Come get me, bro.
I truly think that, though, it's these conversations that, like, there's so many things that come up, and I'm like, oh, that's definitely a trauma response. Like, for myself, I think I can relate to you a lot, because I keep myself so busy. These people get pissed at me all the time. And I think that I'm enjoying it, right? Like, I'm building this life, and I'm like, look at all these things I'm doing. Yes. I'm so successful. But it's like, no, I'm like quieting all the shit I don't want to like think about. And I don't think I'm doing that until I like really think about it. And I'm like, yeah, maybe I am like not quite letting like the things that I need to deal with like surface up. And there's like moments that I'll grab a little bit of it and be like, okay, let's sit with this for a minute, you know? But it is, I can relate to that a lot with just being, you know, a workaholic and trying to, like, I grew up feeling like I wasn't gonna be smart enough, or like I sit in rooms with like people that I think are so smart, right? And I'm like, why am I in this room? Yeah, like, how did I get here? Like, I could hardly find the same two shoes this morning.
I'm wearing two different socks right now. Hopefully you didn't notice.
Nobody can tell. I'm sweating really bad there. So it's just it's crazy the things that we as humans just like put up with, and I think it's just, as long as we keep talking about these things and knowing that like we're trying our best every day
and you've expressed so much gratitude, like this whole podcast you've expressed so much gratitude.
I feel like there's some anger in there still somewhere.
But of course there is, but like, you really, I feel that way. You've really just been like so grateful for the things you're literally like you said like I'm looking at the sun, like what'd you say, like I'm looking at the sunset now. I'm like I'm fucking using that. Like it's true though, right? Like that is a form of gratitude. Yeah
just going through what I've been through, I feel lucky. I'm fortunate to be where I'm at. If it's not luck, it's maybe it's definitely something that we've created, but it's not for hard work, but it's definitely fortunate. Like damn, it's I could have been in a million different other places, and sometimes just seeing what my sister has to deal with on a day to day, because we're in the same environment, and she still struggles with a lot of it, and if not more so than me, on a sense. It's hard. It's hard seeing that, and the frustration of seeing a sibling and a loved one go through that, and you can't really do anything to help them other than give them kind words.
Yeah, I can only imagine your sister, like her trust issues with men. I can only imagine, like, just we don't have to get into that.
Well, and she was 5 years older.
Yeah.
So she
on her second
even
marriage.
Saw, even more.
Right.
Not that you didn't see enough, but like the stuff that I'm sure she. I mean, same with your older siblings, that have just been there and seen things that we can't even imagine.
I always feel like, and maybe it's just for my own like sibling experience, but like my siblings that are parents, like they've been through, some of them a lot of self-inflicted trauma, and some of them a lot of trauma that we were given, and some both. And watching them as parents, I'm like, man, like I look up to you so much, because like I can't speak for you, but for myself, like I've never had the desire to have kids. And it's not something I've ever wanted to do. And
I'm not a mom.
I know. Yeah. and I think like low key, and I think low key, some of it is like, it just seems like too much of a commitment and so scary, and like, it's such a big responsibility that it's like, some of it is from, at least for me, my childhood experiences where I'm like, I don't want to do it. So I commend you for that. Just like taking that leap,
Yeah, I mean, we had a conversation when I was younger, me and some buddies, after I started educating myself, and one of these books I read wanted you to ask yourself and your friends or anybody, just why do you want kids? Why do you want to have kids? And I think for me, why I wanted to have kids was just to prove that I can do it better, like or prove that why did it have to be? I guess it's kind of fucked up on my side that I ran the risk of that I could have been my father and could have raised my sons the same way that I was raised.
I'm certain you knew that wasn't going to happen.
I was going to do my damnedest not to have it happen, but I didn't know. Am I capable of this?
You were flipping a coin at that point.
But then now sitting here, all the anger and resentment that I had towards my father, that look, here I am doing this and you couldn't do this.
Yeah.
And then is that fair on him? Who can know,
Guess who the real little bitch is?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
It's you, Dad.
Yeah, we should call this episode The Real Little Bitch.
I don't know. Part of me wishes that I can go back and just live my life in his shoes some days and just see what that was like. Yeah. Put myself in his shoes and see what I would do. Yeah. Would I do the same things that he, it's just, there's
because
no
it's
way.
easy from here, right, to like say that, but it could have been 1,000 times worse for him. Who even knows? Like,
I still don't think there's an excuse though.
There never is.
She's not saying that.
No, there never is.
Well,
but it's just like I'll keep circling back to emotional intelligence. He had almost zero.
No desire to.
Yeah. Well, so thinking about it now, the cake bowl isn't even the other thing that stands out too is in the same house. I don't know where my mom was, but we were sick, and I remember my dad was trying to get us to take some Dimetap, like had whatever cold. And I remember my sister was sitting there, she was crying, trying to take it, and I was crying because it was that grape nasty ass shit. I don't like it to this day.
Yeah.
But I remember my dad just not having it with me. And he lifted me by my throat off the ground and literally was shoving it down my throat to get me to swallow it. And I was like feet dangling like fucking Star Wars, Darth Vader or whatever. And like I can never do that to my kid. Like never. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I don't know how much cocaine or meth or whatever he had to be on or whatever mind state he was in to do that.
It's so confusing too, right? Because you're trying to give your child medicine.
That's such a perfect way to say it.
make them feel better or not be sick, yet you're actively traumatizing them in the process of this. Right? Like, none of this makes sense. It's so confusing.
That's confusing is the perfect word.
Yeah, I should have cut him off years ago.
You know what? But you did cut him off.
But you wanted more for that, and you saw him for more than what he is and what I think you were, right. You know, which that's like kudos to you. And those are the people that I love most in this world, is you can see past this like piles and piles of shit to like, you are a human being in there somewhere. You have to be like, you have to be somewhere.
Something, yeah.
And he kept proving you wrong every time.
Right.
You kept thinking like, there's this
human
in there.
I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt.
And he's like, no, I'm not. I'm just a little bitch.
Well, family stuff like that is a mind fuck. To cut ties, even with your abuser, is such a mind fuck. Yeah. You know, so the fact that you did, like, you saw something with your own kids and was like, nope, never.
Well, yeah, I think that's what did it for me. Is that Christmas, you know, it's just, I called him like the week before. We usually have Christmas Eve dinner at his house. We'd have food, whatever. And it was like the week before Christmas Eve, and I hadn't called him yet. So I finally called him. I was on my way home from work, and I called him, and he was irritated. He was like, oh, I was just waiting for my son to call me, just kind of sarcastically. And I just brushed it off, like, he's just being a dick, whatever. I was like, well, yeah, you know, what are we doing this year? You know, what time do you want us over? And he's like, well, we lived here. Oh, no, we didn't live here. We lived at our other house. And he's like, well, we were thinking we'd have it at your house, whatever. And I was like, well, here's the thing. We're going to host Christmas with her family. I don't want to host 2 days in a row in our house. It's just too much to do. Yeah. That's 2 meals and 2 families in our house 2 days in a row. And he got all pissed off and just started getting all fucking ignorant about it and just bitching about it. And he hung up on me. So I didn't call him back. I said, well, fuck this guy. You know, whatever, he'll call me or whatever. We'll get over it. Didn't call me. Didn't speak to him until Christmas Eve. I'm like, whatever, we're just sitting there. I remember Christmas Eve, we're sitting there waking up and hanging out with the family. He calls me and says, hey, you working there? I was like, no, I got the day off. And he's like, okay. And he just asked me if I'm working, and that's it. And he just said, okay. And then he hung up, and I'm like, okay. And I didn't ask any questions. I really was kind of still angry with him. And like an hour later, we're still sitting at home in our jammies, whatever. It's Christmas Eve. And I get a text, presents at the front door. And my kids were in the back room in the playroom where they, you know, whatever. And they were like, oh, Grandpa's here, whatever. They saw him pull up in the front of the house and walk up to the house with the bags. And then I get that text on my phone. And they're like, oh, so I kind of, for some reason, something made me like kind of watch him with the kids. And we're like, oh, what's he doing? You know, like, let's scare him or something, like wait for him to ring the doorbell or whatever. And he drops a bag, like we're sitting there watching him. He walks up to the house, he drops the bags off and then walks back to the car and gets in and leaves. And I'm like, that's kind of weird. And they're like, where'd he go? You know, blah, blah. And 5 minutes later, I get that text. And then he says, presents at the door. And I go, what the fuck? Did he really just, you know, drop these presents off and let my kids saw him? And like, you couldn't even, like, what is going on? So at that point, me and Melissa had a long conversation. I said, I'm done. Like, I'm done. The kids were sad and hurt and everything. I'm like, that's it. Like, I drove back to his house with the presents an hour later and did the same thing to him that I did my mom. I said, I walk in his house. I walk in the house. I knock on the door and walk in. He's sitting in his recliner. He's like, what the hell are you doing here? And I had the bags in my hand. And I go, I can't bring these back. And he goes, what the hell? What the fuck are you doing? And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I'm not feeling good. I just, you know, and I was like, well, you just walk up to the house, don't even ring the doorbell, and drop the presents off and just fucking leave them there. My kids see you and everything. It's Christmas Eve. He said, well, I just didn't want to disturb you guys. I'm not feeling that well. And I was just like, you know, that's a horse shit. Something's wrong. Like, you're fucking being a little bitch about something, yada, yada. And I'm just kind of done with you. He's like, you're a fucking asshole. He's like, get the fuck out of my house. I was like, well, give me a hug because I'm not going to see you again. He's like, get the fuck out of here. I'm not giving you a hug, yada, yada, yada. And I haven't seen him since. You know, he's tried to call me a couple times. He called me when we were living here about 6 months to 8 months ago. Oh, he texts me. This fucker texts me on my phone and says, after 2 years, it says, this has been going on long enough. We want to see the kids. That's what he says. Not
the entitlement.
Yeah. Not like, oh, I miss you, son, or how you doing, or anything. He just says, this has been going on for long enough that we want to see the kids.
He's I can only just keep saying this is so confusing.
Over a text.
His love is so confusing to me.
We should make a song.
I think he's just a sad individual that he's just trying to fill holes in his life that his grandsons probably make him happy to an extent that he gets to see life that I don't know what it is. I don't even want to put myself there, but I go on the back patio and I just call him.
Yeah.
And he goes, hey. And I go, hey. And I go, I forget what I said to him, but I just said, hey, like, look, we're done. I got nothing more to do with you in my life. You don't bring anything positive to my life or my kid's life. You find your own happiness. You go do you.
Yeah.
Don't fucking call me. I want nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's how you feel. And I was like, that's how I'm telling you. That's how I feel. I'm not going to fucking text it to you.
Yeah.
I'm not a coward. I told him that. I remember I said, I'm not a coward.
You're a little bitch.
Yeah. And he's like, okay. And we just hung up. And I haven't seen him since. And my sister, she gets pissed off. Like, my grandmother died on my dad's side. Before we had that conversation, I didn't go to her funeral because I don't jive with the family. You know, there's nothing to, I told, when I cut my dad off before I had that conversation here at the house, I went to my grandmother in the trailer and I said, hey, you know, I love my grandma. She didn't really abuse me. You know, she was special, but I told her, like, look, I cut dad off. And she totally understood. She's like, yeah, I know how he is. And I'm scared of him too sometimes, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I understand. And we kind of had our last little talk. And I feel like that was it. That's all we needed. Like, she's an old school broad. She just took it on the chin and just like, hey, I'm probably not going to see you again. I get it, kid.
Yeah.
Enjoy your life.
There you go.
You're right.
There you go.
I didn't feel like I needed to go to a funeral, but my cousins and my sister were just upset, you know, and I mean, that's your choice.
Yeah.
They can make their choices.
It's like they want to live some drama show. Like, you guys want to live some 90210, like, oh, we're here for the...
Sounds more like Melrose Place.
Or whatever. I don't know. I never watched him.
I'm just kidding.
It's just, you guys are here for the dog and pony show. Like,
yeah. You're like, I'm
not
into
get up here and talk about how good these people were possibly when they weren't really that good.
Yeah.
I think it's a good example of, like, how... You know, we build our own families around us too. And like, family doesn't just mean blood.
Yeah.
And there's some people that like get treated just as poorly, if not worse, and better, but still aren't accepted. And there's like all these different structures. And so I think it's a beautiful thing when we get to build our own families around us and what we feel safe and we feel loved and we, you know, and we shouldn't have to feel forced to like be around people and with people just because they're our blood.
Just because
like so odd.
The status quo says that they're our family. Like,
it's like ride or die till the end.
No,
that's a crock of shit. That's a crock of shit.
Shit. Like, what do you? They'll steal the $5 out of your fucking wallet when you're not looking. What are you talking about?
Well, and also if you emotionally deplete me, like, I'm not doing it.
Hey, you're a vampire. You're just emotional vampire. There's no reason to be around you.
Exactly. So, what advice would you give a new dad? We're gonna wrap it up, I think, here. You could say even the funniest advice you want to give. It doesn't have to be serious.
The funniest advice.
Get the butt
for
paste.
A new dad that has gone through trauma in his life.
Yeah.
I don't know. Take it a day at a time. You know, just take it slowly. Don't make any rash decisions. You know, life is. It might seem short, but it's kind of long. You know, especially when you make the wrong choices.
Yeah.
There's a lot of time over your head. There's a lot of time to think about it, and it's just, you know, there's good people. Just, you know, if there wasn't love or hope in the world, it would be a cold ass place, and it doesn't have to be that way. And I think a lot of people feed off of that. And, you know, I think that if you just find your happiness and not what other people want your happiness to be, I think that that's kind of like your happy place in a sense, you know, just whatever makes you happy. Like, for me, it's board games or just whatever, you know, whatever. Yeah, exactly. You know, it's just whatever passion you got, follow it. Fuck whoever says something about it. Just do whatever you do. And as long as it doesn't hurt anybody, who gives a shit?
I love that.
Yeah.
Who's the little bitch now?
Yeah, right?
Bitch.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I loved this conversation. I mean, I know we talk outside of this, but
right.
How about this?
Good. Yeah, exactly.
These very specific
it's sad,
things.
Yeah. I like skating, wearing a wig.
That was a little more fun, but this was great too,
Tony.
Tony.
This is amazing. Yeah.
But thank
Can
you.
we cut in the clip where she has me looking like somebody from The Hills Have Eyes?
I wish we would have caught you falling.
Oh my God. If I was a parent out there and saw me out there, this guy on 2 White Claws with a wig on, I would like, get the hell
Crushing White Claws on the side.
Get away from my kid, dude. Get off the rink.
And what about me?
I know. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
That really was amazing.
It was
awesome.
Mess. Yes, life is a beautiful mess. A beautiful mess.